We're talking fact finders today. Scott Pearson with Twible Pearson, also representing the Springfield Metropolitan Bar Association. And over time, even though marijuana has been legal in one form or another for a couple of years now in Missouri, started out with medical marijuana,
right,
we're still getting questions about marijuana. And the first one is from Mike. And Mike wants to know, is it illegal in Missouri to have a gun in your possession while under the influence of marijuana?
It's a really good question. So that statute is the unlawful use of a weapon statute. And specifically, if you're in an intoxicated state and you're negligently using that, it can be a felony. So if you just have it in your possession and you're under the influence, that's not going to be a crime. But if you've gotten to the level of intoxication, and then you're using the firearm in a negligent manner, or you're just dropping out of your pants. I had a case way back when that somebody was intoxicated and couldn't keep the gun holstered. That was an unlawful use of a weapon. And so for some reason you'd had so much marijuana that you were intoxicated, and then you also had the gun, then it can become a felony.
So again, just to be clear about this, you can have marijuana and you can have a gun, but it's when you've used the marijuana to a point of intoxication and you have the gun, then it becomes a problem.
Then it becomes a problem. And then there's, of course, the federal law, which is a little bit more murky on that, right? Because you have to remember marijuana is still illegal on the federal level. So if you have a copious amounts of marijuana and guns, you could be looking at other problems that are a lot bigger. But if you have a personal use amount of marijuana, an individual should be okay in that situation.
Should be okay.
Should be okay.
There's still
that's the legal me saying, you know, always remember it. Federally right now, still marijuana is still illegal, and guns and drugs, when they're mixed on the federal level, can cause issues. So I advise my clients that if you are ingesting marijuana, it's probably best to do that away from firearms.
So put it in a gun safe.
Exactly.
If you're going to use marijuana.
Absolutely.
But it's not illegal to have the gun, just to have it.
Correct. It's not illegal just to have the gun. In the state of Missouri, it's once again unlawful use of a weapon, which is the issue. And then the constitutional amendment that was passed. Remember, this isn't just a new law. This is the Missouri Constitution. Now makes it legal for you to possess a firearm. Also, of course, makes it legal for you also now to possess marijuana. And so you can do both of those as well.
Okay. Another viewer, Ken, wants to know, what can I do if my expungement hasn't happened yet? Can I do anything on a personal level to get this moving forward? And this is an issue all across the state, expungements.
Right. So I've had conversations with judges, the OSCA, which is the Office of Supreme Court Administrators, about this very issue. It's important to break down that there's 3 types of marijuana offenses in the state of Missouri. First is going to be individuals who have a misdemeanor marijuana offense. That's something that was litigated in state court. Second, there's going to be felonies. Those are going to be the issues that were higher, more than 35 grams back in the day. And then you also have ordinance violations or infractions. Those are the municipalities. So let's start there.
Okay.
Individuals who have ordinance violations, courts aren't going through in Springfield and expunging those. Those are going to remain on the record right now. Now, I think that's going to go up to the Missouri Supreme Court at some time, and we're going to have a conversation about whether or not the constitutional amendment made it so those should have been expunged. I believe it should have been, but right now those are not being expunged. So the individuals who have those ordinance violations for marijuana possession are not going to get automatic expungement right now. But they can go through a statutory process where they can petition the court for expungement if they meet certain criteria there. And that's a little bit of a convoluted answer, but the long story is, yes, you can get it expunged, but maybe not automatically for those ordinance violations. On the misdemeanors, those should have all been expunged by June 6th. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I was in court yesterday, and I just got one of my clients' misdemeanor marijuana offenses expunged. It should have happened before June. It had not. And you have to remember that these courts are looking at throughout the state of Missouri. They're having to go back through paper files, they're having to go through electronic files, and they're trying to go do it as much as they can to get all these expunged. I think Greene County, out of all counties, is doing a phenomenal job of trying to get that done, but they're still in the process of doing that. And then for felonies, those should have all been done by December 6th. And we still have those felonies that are there that need to come back and get expunged. So if you're in that position and you're not sure whether it's been expunged, one, check on Missouri CaseNet. Two, go ahead and call the clerk's office and say, has this been expunged or has a judge looked at it? And then if it hasn't been, you can either file a petition or you can hire an attorney, but you might be able to even do it yourself. Just be like, hey, judge, this is an issue that should have been expunged and hasn't been, and file something with the court.
So if you're someone like, and I'm going to look back at his name, Ken.
Yeah.
If you're Ken and you really say you're not able to get a job.
Right.
Because there's a conviction on your record. You need to get this moving forward faster. Am I going to be better off on my own if I'm Ken, or better off hiring an attorney?
Well, I'm going to be biased there because I'm an attorney,
I'm sure,
right?
yes.
So I think you're going to be better off hiring an attorney to understand the legalese of everything that needs to take place and file the appropriate petitions. But long story short is Ken is entitled by the Missouri Constitution to have that automatically expunged. And if it hasn't been done yet, then people should know about it and that should get fixed.
And if Ken is worried about money, I know this is individual cases, individual clients, but he can go through the Springfield Metropolitan Bar Association, find an attorney.
Yes. We have the Clean Slate Clinic with the Springfield Metropolitan Bar Association. All we do with it is expungements. And we've partnered with Legal Services of Southwest Missouri to get people paid attorneys, essentially, that they don't have to pay for, that can help them through this process. So if you're interested and you need a need-based expungement, as long as you're below the poverty guidelines, you can contact the Springfield Metropolitan Bar Association, fill out an application with Legal Services, and you might be able to get a free attorney for it.
When's the next Clean Slate Clinic?
Oh man, Krista Hogan with the Springfield Metropolitan Bar Association is going to be mad at me. I don't remember the exact date, but we have them all the time. We just had one back a couple months ago. I'm sure we'll have one this spring as well.
Okay. And you can look at the website to find information on
Absolutely,
that.
yes.
And contact Krista.
Don't contact Krista, but contact the Springfield Bar Association. Yes, and they'll be able to tell you when the next hearing is.
And okay. And that's a wonderful thing, because I think a lot of people are worried, I'm looking for a job, so I don't have a lot of money, but I need to get this off my record so I can get a job and have some money.
Absolutely. Or they might be applying for an apartment and that they might not be eligible because of that and they can't get as good of a place to live. Or the thing I've seen the most is people who can't make lateral moves. So they're stuck in a job that's low paying and they don't feel like they can make that lateral move to get that higher paying job, and that because they need to get an expungement done.
Okay. Laura has a question. She says, downstairs there's a man who sits on the stairs, smokes pot outside. It comes up into my windows, even through my front door. I don't understand why this is allowed. What can I do? Is that legal? So there's a person in an apartment smoking marijuana outside, and it's affecting his neighbor.
So there's a few Springfield ordinances that are probably violated there. One is that you're not supposed to be able to smoke marijuana in public. That's one ordinance violation. Two is that you're not supposed to be able to smell it in public. And so just the smoke itself, there's Springfield City Council, I think last year, passed a law specific to that. And third is just not even associated with marijuana, but just in general, it's kind of if you have an odor that's going off on too much, that's also can be considered a law violation. So what they can do is you can contact non-emergency line, indicate that, hey, you're having a problem with this, and then maybe a law enforcement officer can stop by. Also, it's a really good issue that instead of getting law enforcement involved, talk to your landlord, and the landlord can tell that individual that they're not supposed to smoke close to the building or anything of that nature. The constitutional amendment gives landlords a lot of authority over their own property of where people can actually smoke marijuana.
So if I'm Laura, maybe the best course of action is maybe knocking on the door and saying, hey, can you smoke inside instead of outside? Then go to the landlord?
Sure, and you talk to that person saying, hey, this is causing a nuisance to me, and then go from there. And I'm always a big fan of people having individual conversations at a, cordial level to get those things fixed before involving law enforcement. Law enforcement should always be kind of the last resort in a situation like that.
Right. So, bottom line though, if it gets to that point, Springfield does have an ordinance. It could be illegal for this person to be smoking outside.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mike wants to know, I overheard my neighbor saying that his pre-legal dealer is still his go-to for marijuana. Can police still bust people for selling dope. And there's a process in the state of Missouri, right?
There is. So I can't simply, there is allowed to be small exchanges of marijuana without it being considered distribution underneath the new Missouri constitutional amendment, but there shouldn't be an exchange of money there. And so in this circumstance where somebody is still dealing or black market now for drugs, that circumstance would still be illegal. The question becomes, how is that now enforceable right now in the state of Missouri, and what's the process for that? That's a lot more convoluted. So the short answer is, unless this is their friend they're getting their drugs from, which theoretically they could do that, getting for their marijuana from, if they're getting a large amount or this person's selling and it's a continuing operation, that would be illegal. Still, you'd have to go through a licensure process in order to get that license, and that's why you see a lot of people with a lot of advertising and marketing who spent tens of thousands of dollars to be able to legally sell throughout the Springfield area.
And then if you buy it from someone who's licensed, you know it's been tested at some level.
Right, and it's come from, because remember, we're everywhere from a seed to distribution, the way that that's all been taken care of under the constitutional amendment, that's all been codified to make sure that the process is safe for the consumer.
Okay. And Jeff here, as a landlord, can I prevent my renters from growing weed on my properties? I'm guessing this isn't an apartment. This must be land or a house that's been rented.
That's a really good question, and I did some research on it, and I'm still a little bit unsure. Here's what they can do. They can tell them absolutely that they cannot smoke in their apartment. But there's a limitation. For example, you can tell them you can't smoke, but they can still do edibles, right? And that's actually in the constitutional amendment that would allow them to do that. The question is a little bit more murky when it comes to growing, because underneath the Missouri Constitution, an individual now has the right to grow marijuana in their house at a very low level, few plants for personal use. And if that person is doing so in not their premises, do they have the ability to do so? I believe that a landlord can put that in a lease that essentially says you're not to grow marijuana in this circumstance, and that would probably be enforceable. And there's also maybe some arguments in regards to how the federal law would play on how a landlord could also look at that and say, hey, we're not quite sure if this is in violation of federal law. But ultimately, that's something that if I was a landlord and I had my properties, what I would be looking at is putting that in a lease agreement and using that as the mechanism for enforcing that. Because I think the Missouri Constitution gives individuals the right now to grow their individual plants.
So if I'm the landlord, I don't like it in the current situation, I may or may not be able to address that, but I could address it going forward.
Exactly, right. You just put an addendum to your future lease with that individual.
Right.
You know, that's what I would recommend.
It's kind of murky at the moment.
It's super murky, and I think that's what we're seeing a lot with this, as this law has been in effect now for 14 months. And as with any new law, and especially with something that is a 180 from previous judicial authority, we're seeing a lot of things that everybody's trying to figure it out. How do we need to put it in place here, and how we put it in place there? And it really permeates through a lot of different aspects of our life.
And it's a pretty radical change from the medical marijuana step that we took before that.
A really big change from that, absolutely.
We appreciate all the questions we get from our viewers, and if you have additional questions for the Springfield Metropolitan Bar Association, we can forward those to the Bar Association. I don't know if you're going to answer those personally or some of your fellow members might be able to answer those.
You know, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and so when it comes outside of anything with like marijuana, drugs, or expungements, when it's civil in nature, there's other experts in the legal community. But I love talking about this stuff, and we're a big advocate for expungements for everybody. And I know that the Clean Slate Clinics can continue to advocate for those individuals who've not been granted their constitutional expungement to make sure that we get that done.
Okay. So if you have questions, go ahead and send them to me. I'll send them along to the Bar Association, and it may not be you answering them, but someone will get back to you, and I promise I'll pass those questions along. So we appreciate you coming in.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. And that's the end of this Fact Finders.